Alright, welcome back to part 2 of the second set of tutorials. In this one we're going to look at configuration and logging. This should be the last part of our infrastructure. We'll start to go back and tidy up our infrastructure later on. But let's first of all talk about configuration. Now, one thing that you find is that once you start using a service discovery platform, something like Consul, actually a lot of your configuration melts away because a lot of your configuration is just service discovery. I'm going to give an example now of our SQL Server. Rather than having a configuration of where we contact SQL Server, instead we're going to register a static service with Consul. This means that the service itself doesn't take care of the registry, and instead we put in a file that when our agent boots up, it auto-registers this service. Now you can still change this at runtime. You can get Consul to reload it, you can override it. So say if you wanted to fail over between SQL servers, it just means that we don't need this in configuration anywhere. So all we do is we enter the service address, the port that we want it on, we can put tags on it, and we can actually put health checks on it. Now Consul supports TCP-based health checks rather than HTTP. It doesn't really do a lot other than connect to the port and then close it straight away, but it can show some liveliness of the service or not. Anyway, for now we have made our file, and then we'll put in a copy command to copy any local JSON file, and we'll copy that over into the console/config folder. Now when the Consul agent starts up, it will automatically load any JSON file in that folder and try and register those services. So let's just take a look now. If we build our Docker image and then we start Docker, and that's it. That's all you need to do to register a static service. Let's go back over to our solution now, and we'll add a class for this configuration called database connection. And what we're going to do is make it an injected class, and it will take in the iService registry. And we will save a copy of that to a local member variable. And then what we're going to do is we are going to look up our SQL Server from the iService registry. Now because it's an async call, what we'll actually do is we'll return an async connection. So here we'll just throw an argument null exception so we catch any problems early on with our injection. And then we'll just return a task with string because we'll return the connection, and get connection string. Now what we're going to do is not actually make this an async method, but instead just use the continue with. There's no need for us to make a whole state machine behind the scenes for this because it's only got a single awaitable in it. We're going to grab the environment variable out of the SA password environment variable. Now we should probably cache this, but if we grab it every time, then if the environment variable changes, then we'll actually get an update when we make the next connection to the server. And we'll get the service instance async, and we'll do a continue with off it. And this here saves us making this an async method. And we'll get the result out of the info task. And that will be the service information. So we'll just call it info. And then we'll build up our string and return it. Now one interesting thing about this is if you do fail over, because we ask this class every time for our connection string, our app will automatically fail over. This means it's quite a nice way to be able to fail over between SQL servers, or for instance Redis supports Consul and can actually help you fail over between masters and slaves. And for that you use tags on the service to tell you which one's currently master and which one's slave. So we'll build up our string. It's a pretty typical string. We've got our data source, which is our address, port, SA for our user ID, passwords injected from an environment variable. So if you're using containers, you can inject that directly into your container, and then the initial catalog. Now one thing I have done before in the past is used a tag on that database server to give us the initial catalog name, which just allows you to change the database if you want. This is our repository that I prepared earlier. No point watching me go back through that. and it's basically got an insert method on it to insert our doc. So we inject our database connection, we save that internally, and then we will add that to our async insert method or add swagger doc method as another thing we await on. So if we'll just double check that that's not null again using our argument null exception, our null coalescing, and our name of. So it's got a few language features in there, but a syntactic sugar. And then we'll get connection string here and we'll throw the await in front of it. And that should be it. So let's just connect to our SQL server using SQL Management Studio. And we will just run a query just to make sure that there's nothing in the database and that our new data is coming in. Let's take a look and we'll do our select. So now we can see that there's nothing in the table to start with. And it's completely empty. It's our empty test database. And we'll head back to our app and we will run up the test client and we'll run up our web server. First of all, of course, we need to inject our connection string, our database connection. As a singleton, there's no point having more than one of those. And of course, it'll get the registry injected directly into it. The reason for that is the registry actually comes as part of the use console services. Add console services. So let's check now. We're running our web server and we'll run our test app. And hit our breakpoint, F5 through that, and come down here, and it looks like we've got a result. And the result is 1, so obviously that's ID 1 because it's the first thing we've injected into there. We've inserted into the database, and there it is there. So that worked perfectly. So it just goes to show here that sometimes we don't actually need configuration when we think we do once we have a service discovery platform. In our next video, we'll actually go into proper configuration when we do need configuration settings.